And welcome back, everybody. This is your host, Jeffrey Scoutsheiser. This is for History 103, American History since the Reconstruction. This is for Cerritos College, but I'm sure other people will be watching it too. Welcome. Today, we are going to do our next online lecture. This one's going to be Korean War Part 1, using the USMC official history book. Yay, this is open source now, or what would you say, copyright free would be more correct. I will show you the title page for anybody who would like to try to find it. It's a worthy endeavor. Okay, here we go. I'm moving it over. I'm showing it. Okay, we're using this. Oh, sorry for the flashbang, everybody. This is actually the U.S. Marine Corps edition, too, which is always fun. Okay, this is the U.S. Marine Operation Korea. It's a 5-volume set. And in this two sections, we're going to do Pusan perimeter first, and then part 2 next time. Okay, it's a decently famous book, but yes, this is the cover page. If you look for this, you can find it on archive.org or other places. And if you're curious, the USMC put it up themselves. That means they let the copyright go. So it's nice. I think it already was up, but they didn't fight for it. So we'll be basing this on an official government source. So again, sometimes they write good books. This is one of the few I've found that is quite good. So that's what we'll be using today. All right. Warning alarm to get started. All right, welcome everybody. So as normal, I'll be working through this. And yeah, I guess because this will be put up online, questions you can put in the YouTube comments. All right. So, okay. We're starting with, there goes my animations, Korea. All right, so Korean War, where is it, why do we care? All right, so these pictures, again, come from the Marine book. It's good enough that I'm borrowing it in Moss, just because it's worth the energy. Let me see here. I got a lot of notes, so stand by, everybody. Here we go, and let's switch that, just in case. Very nice. Okay, so we did World War II, and again, if you don't know World War II, it's fine. We're going to do some of that today. But the first two is just talk about key agreements that made Korea exist. Location. So, okay, these maps are helpful. This is a Korean War map, by the way. So it'll start at this line, if you look. And you got to ask, why is it starting at that line, right? So this is Korea. Where is it? Well, I love this little map the Marines made for us. The strategic triangle. Hi, everybody. Here's Korea. Co-equal distance between Japan, Russia, and China. So strategically, very relevant in East Asia. Now, we haven't gotten the question like, Professor, why is this in American history class? And why is there an American war? That is an excellent question, everybody. Let's get into some of that. Okay, so this chapter 1 is called Korea Doorstep of Strategy. So background, shouldn't shock anybody, there's a civil war in Korea, right? So why? Well, it's the post-war order we've talked about in class, but if you've never heard it and you're just random listening to this, welcome. Funny enough, 2 or 3 of these guys won World War II, right? China and Russia are victorious treaty signers of World War II. Japan is a loser of World War II, which had the United States there as controlling it as basically a kingdom until 1950. Okay, and this war starts in 1950, everybody. Just pointing that out. And it was basically headed by the guy, his name is General Douglas MacArthur, who is basically king of Japan. So this is the 3 allies from World War II competing for political power. Okay, so now after World War II, there's a pretty major issue here. That is to say, this was a Japanese state. See where it is? And actually all of up here was a part of China that was part of Japan. When Japan lost the war, they immediately disappear. Korea had a giant power vacuum. There was nothing. Like there was no civil authority, there was no military, there was no police, right? That was all Japanese. Gone. And as we'll see in a minute, the United States and Soviets rushed to fill this gap, and also the Soviets had another advantage, is there's tens of thousands of North Koreans fighting for the Soviets and the Chinese in World War II against the Japanese. So they're very veteran. Hi, everybody. This is going to be a theme we'll notice a lot with communists. Now, I have key events and agreements here. We did some of these in class, but I'll mention them. The Cairo Conference was the U.S., Great Britain, China. In 1943, they agree Korea should be independent. So China, by fighting World War II, actually does get things. It's hard to remember this sometimes when we look at the Atlantic War. But China got this an early concession. This is before the war; they knew they were going to win, right? So Korea should be independent, aka not an imperial state. And so it was a colony. Now there's a couple other points here to point out. Syngman Rhee was a patriot. Okay, well, I'm going to be really quick, everybody. Depending on who writes the book, they'll call some people communists and some people patriots, or some people imperial lapdogs and some people patriots. As far as I can tell, they're all patriots. But Syngman Rhee was the south, this line here, right? He was the guy on the south. The north is the Soviet allies. And he tried to get his government recognized. Now, here's the trouble. The U.S. does this a lot. Recognizing government in exile. Oops. But the U.S. wasn't sure they wanted to pick him. By 45, there's the Yalta Conference. The U.S. and Soviet Union agreed. So now it's not just Britain, U.S., China. It's now Soviet Union and U.S. agree that there should be an independent Korea, but probably the two of them need to have a trusteeship and guarantee it, right? Now, historically, Russia has a say here. They're trying to reclaim things from an earlier war with Japan, which I think I do have on here. Oh, we do. We'll talk about it. Okay, so strategic significance. Obviously, location. We already talked about that. Historical possession. Let's be honest. China, Russia, Japan have all historically sought to control Korea. Historically speaking, Chinese were the most successful, then the Japanese, Russians last. China has the longest term interest in Korea, though. There's been, within the last 50 years of this war, there was 2 land wars fought in Korea, one Russia versus Japan and one China versus Japan. Japan won both, by the way. Okay. And we're scrolling down. Okay, Russo-Japanese War. Let's do a little bit of this. So, like I said, 50 years before this war, which again, 1950s when it starts, there was a war between Japan and Russia. And basically, the Koreans weren't quite yet a colony. And they were trying to play people off against each other. We didn't really talk about China, I just mentioned it, but 10 years before this, the Koreans were playing the Chinese against the Japanese, and the Chinese lost. And now the Russians basically replaced the Chinese, and they're doing the same thing. So it's who gets interest here, Korea, and a place up here called Manchuria. Now, to make this way more complicated, half of Manchuria has already been conceded to Russia. Russia just wants the rest. So there's this big competition going on for resources and power over here in Asia. Okay. Now, the key is here, the Japanese defeat the Russians. They have a land battle. See that there's a little peninsula right here. You can't see it on this map because it's in China. There's a little port here called Port Arthur. The Japanese siege the Russians there for 2 years. But the reason the Japanese win the war is especially a battle called the Battle of Tsushima, or Tsushima Straits, which is right here. The Japanese managed to defeat the entire Russian. This is the second Russian fleet they've sunk. They sunk the Pacific Fleet. They sink the Baltic and European fleets, at least partially, right here. And I think they lose about 100 guys and they kill about 20,000. So the Japanese get a massive victory, and the Russians sign a treaty. Actually, they sign it in Portsmouth in the United States, and where's that in England? I don't know. The English step in, and they cede territory, and the Russians do, and then they recognize Japan's interests. Okay, the next part of our story, Korea is part of Japan for. This says 35 years. It's more like 45. And I have an old travel book around here somewhere I really should have shown you guys that has the Japanese. It's a travel guide from like 1930, and it's like, would you like to? How do you get to the state of Chosen? That's what they called it, right? And then it shows you just how to get boat routes to Korea and Taiwan and Manchuria. Anyway, so they treated it like a state. Obviously, the Koreans do not agree. But from 1910 to 1945, there's not any more war in Korea. That's the key to point out. Now, when World War II ends, obviously Japan can't have any more colonial possessions, so it's up for grabs again. Okay, now we get the Soviets in the Cold War. So now we're to 45, right? We've gone to the end of this. And remember, this is a Marine book from the 50s, so it has to be suitably militant against the Soviets, because they were the competition, right? All the other enemies had been defeated, now it's the Soviets, right? So the subsection is called Soviet aggression in the Cold War. So post-war ambitions, the Soviet Union continued to expand its influence. Um, our book compares them to Germans and Japanese, but hi everybody. The U.S. also tried to expand its influence, obviously. Okay, just it's natural. Now at this point, it's still Stalin, and at this point, he's they'd acquired places, and it depends how you count it, right? But Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Czechoslovakia, Austria, half of Germany, Hungary, Romania, Mongolia, and Manchuria. So the Russians were doing pretty good, the Soviets, right? So there's this idea that you can't let them win everything. And again, we talked about it in class, but I'll mention it. We're 70 years after World War II now at this point, 75. The probably the best Machiavellian explanation for why did the United States nuke Japan is to prevent a partition. This is why. Because if you look at this little map right here, even this little map I have, this little tip here, you see that? The Japanese and the Russians split it, but in the last month of the war, the Russians declared war on Japan. They'd invaded this set of islands and this set. They were literally like 5 miles from invading the North Island of Japan. They could have easily partitioned Japan, just like Korea, just like Germany. And the U.S. wanted to end it faster, basically. So is it saving a million lives or not wanting to partition with Russia? And after you see Korea in a minute, you can see what the logic is. Does that make sense? Like, again, I'm not defending or not defending it, but after seeing this war, you'll see there might be a logic to it in the strategic sense. Okay. Especially the goal, they decide partitioning Korea. And again, this one, you can't really stop the Russians. Russia has a land border up here in northern part of Korea. They just accepted it. So Soviet troops entered in August 12, 1945, swiftly established control over the northern region, seizing industrial machinery and looting. Now, the Japanese spent 45 years building up Korea. It was a very well-off area compared to the beginning of the period. So, I mean, the Soviets took the stuff. And then once the surrender happened, there was this line. They decided the 38th parallel, let's have a treaty. Let's partition it. And remember, this is not just giving the Soviets things. It's already acknowledging what they had. That's it. And the Allies also have to come to the south and try to help out a bit. There wasn't that many troops at the beginning, though. But yeah, the Soviets have some advantages. For example, large number of Korean refugees and communists trained in Russia and China who aided communist rule. Hi, everybody. They used Koreans to rule Korea. The United States tries the same in the South, too. It's actually a good strategy. Okay. So there's a lot of civil strife. It shouldn't shock you in this period. And the Koreans, we haven't really talked about the Koreans, but I'll give you a short version. I'm teaching about Korea in another class. The Koreans' main political interest is just independence. That's all they want. The Koreans aren't very political at this point. They just want to not have foreign control. And they'll take what they can get for that. So this is the key, too. Just like the Vietnam War, both factions want to be independent from foreign influence. And they're just basically competing with types of foreign influence. All right. And it shouldn't shock you that dividing Korea isn't very good for their economy, right? It's rough for them. It splits families, all kinds of things. Because it's arbitrary, right? Why the 38th parallel? It's a good question. Some guy on a map just drew a line. That's why. Okay. Now, they tried to form governments for the next 2 years, 47, 48. And now there is a United Nations. They tried to intervene, and they wanted to ask, and remember, it's the UN. They don't tell anything, they ask. So the United States asked a question, what about Korean unification? And then the United Nations in 1948 said, hey, that'd be great. Maybe we should have a national assembly. And the Soviets just said, no, thank you. That is to say, they didn't want to be in the elections because they're not Soviet elections. They're like Western style elections, right? So it's a different style. By the way, Soviets do have elections, everybody. They have one-party elections, funny enough. The South Koreans had elections. So there is a formation of something called the Republic of Korea. Here. Up here? Not yet. And then America is over it. They're like, we won, guys. Good job. Victory. 1948, the U.S. military government ended. There was one, and they left with almost all their troops. leaving a very small contingent of quote unquote military instructors. The North, shouldn't shock you, immediately builds up. They build a communist, Soviet-backed communist state called the People's Democratic Republic of Korea, still exists. And they claim to represent all Korea, they just don't control the South yet. And the leader is a guy called Kim Il-sung. His grandson now runs the country, by the way. They emphasize the need for strong military, rapid expansion and equipping the North with Russian weapons. Their philosophy is literally called juche, which means self-reliance. So again, remember that they want to be free. That's what they're looking for. Now the North Koreans just start raiding the South. For them, it's guerrilla tactics. Remember, they're communists. They've trained to fight officially in like state-level fighting. So that they start raiding over the southern border. Tensions escalate for the next 2 years. Again, on the slide, but I'll mention it. So thousands of veterans returned to North Korea after serving in communist armies in China. In 1949, the communists win in China. So now suddenly there's more free troops. Yay! And they've been fighting in China for 5 to 15 years. And again, communists are very good at something. It's called propaganda. They actually have a name for it. It's called agitprop. Agitation propaganda. It's a very powerful tool of communism. They're very good at it. It's rhetoric, everybody, and they're quite good. And this war will officially start on June 25th, 1950. We'll get there next slide. Now, the North Korean army, just a couple notes. Do I have it on the next slide? Oh, I do. We'll put some basic intro. They're well composed. They were veteran. They fought in World War II and the Chinese Civil War. They have a lot of Russian and Soviet training. And hi, everybody. Chinese and Soviet training. I'm going to point this out. Don't underestimate the Chinese or the Russians. You'll see in a minute. We'll get there. Okay, so now we get the units. There's a bunch of units. I'm not going to get into all of them. But they're, I still have this one. Yeah, the strategic context of the North Korean aggression. And basically the Russians tried to win this through propaganda. When they figured out it wouldn't work, they decided, okay, it's time for civil war. And they did try, quote, propaganda, subversion, and other soft tactics. Hi, everybody. That is part of statecraft. I'm just going to point that out. Domestic political discontent. It was thought to help, actually, Russia if they start a war and win. And most of the heavy industries was north of this parallel. The Japanese built their industry up here because it was closer to resources. But all the manufacturing for arms was in the south. Interesting enough. We talked about their structure. Generally speaking, the North expected a quick victory. The Republic of Korea military was not well regarded. It was not veteran. Not a lot of threat there. Okay. And they basically copied Soviet military structure. Again, read the book if you want all of it. But the Soviets built, their fundamental building block was called divisions. Americans had divisions, but we didn't use them like the Soviets did. They had basically infantry divisions with a little bit of everything in it. And they just, people go, oh, Soviet human wave. They understood the importance of big units. Even though during their Russia recently, they reformed a bunch of their divisions from Soviet era back down to regiments, and now they're back to divisions as of 2025. It's just a unit that the Soviets practiced with, and they found it to be very effective for their style of warfare. And the North Koreans copy them, basically. Exactly. Is there more I can go into here? No, they're pretty standard. There's a lot of detail. It explains what their rifle regiments look like to give you an idea of size. Right, a division will have up to 3 regiments. Right, a rifle regiment is like 2,500 men, and they have rifle battalions, artillery. They have all the heavy machine guns, mortars, anti-tank. So the North Koreans at this point are equipped as a traditional army. They're not guerrillas or anything. They're actually pretty well equipped, and again by the Russians. So it's something to point out. And they have an air force, but at the beginning they weren't very strong. Quote, initial equipment included Japanese aircraft and gliders. But in the 1950, for the first 6 months of 1950, the Soviets start to train them. I'm going to be honest with you too. Eventually the Soviets just fly the jets. Because at the beginning they give them, let's see here, They have like 1,500 Air Force, very small, and they have stuff like Yak 7s. If you don't know what it is, don't worry. They basically have World War II surplus. Like here is a blown up. I think that might be a Joseph Stalin. I don't think it looks too big to be a T-34, even the special T-34. It could be that turret looks a little big. I think it's a Joseph Stalin. So they give it. The Soviets are giving surplus World War II stuff they don't need anymore. Yeah, this could be. It says it could be a T-34-85. Again, it looks a little bit chubby. Okay, now anything else I want to add here? Let's see. Training. I didn't really put this on here, did I? Oh, of course they have to have. This is funny. Acceptable political background and 6 years of schooling. Funny enough, but they had very good training programs. Again, they're being trained by war veterans. Everybody, it's going to turn out pretty good. I have their order of battle. We don't care about that. Let me see. Okay, UN response. I've talked about a bit about it, but they have very successful training. They were a well-trained army. That's the part you need to know. I'll check how far I've been going, everybody. I'm going 20 minutes. Oh, we're doing great. Okay, initial United Nations response. Okay, obviously it's the UN, right? They send a dispatch, everybody. They have a dispatch from the United States Commission on Korea reported Soviet Yak aircraft destroying planes and jeeps in an airfield near Seoul. Security Council resolves, they always do this too, with 9 member nations voting unanimously. The USSR was not there. Yugoslavia skipped it. Now again, however, this is a trick. They basically voted when the Soviets weren't there, so they couldn't veto it. Yeah, it's kind of underhanded, I'm not going to lie. But the aggression was North Korean. North Koreans were ordered to cease hostilities, withdraw from Republic of Korea. Then the Security Council doesn't have armed forces right at this point. Proclaimed the North Korea People Armies in a breach of world peace. Member nations were urged to assist Republic of Korea with repelling the invasion. The U.S. announced immediate military aid to the Republic of Korea. So the UN doesn't have an army, right? The only way the UN gets something is people volunteer. In this war, it was nominally a United Nations war. Now again, the Soviets didn't get a vote. Haha. So you might ask, wait, what's going on there, Professor? Exactly. But end up what happening here, Douglas MacArthur authorized to send U.S. forces from Japan to Korea. And the part the Americans could do quickly, American naval blockade of the Korean coast and airstrikes north of the 38th parallel. So the United States, remember, we're doing a peninsula, everybody. Ooh, let's go back. We're in a peninsula, everybody. The United States has a giant navy at this point from a holdover from World War II. It can easily blockade all of this. And they do, by the way. All right. A note on the strategy here. Obviously, the goal is to attack and win quickly for the North Koreans. They do some minor amphib locations. We don't care that much about that. But they basically make headquarters. Now, I'm going to show this map again before I go any further. Look at the dates here, everybody. We have June 30th, July 30th. So there's this line here. The war starts the 25th, right? So here's the border. On the 5 days, they've taken the capital of South Korea. 15 days, 2 weeks. They took half of South Korea. A month later, they took the entirety of South Korea except for the Pusan pocket. Hello, everybody. You don't have to know anything else, just look at this map. Looking at this map shows you, excuse me, Professor, that looks like the North Koreans are much better than the Republic of Korea. Much, 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 much better. The South Korean army completely collapses, and this basically ends up being the U.S. holding this little pocket within a month. Hi, everybody. We're in the Ukraine war right now. The Ukraine war went longer than a month, right? So this shows you, like, when there's that much of an imbalance, how quickly the battle ends. So it was basically here, in 1 month, the U.S. had to decide, do they just let Korea collapse, or they try to win this? And there is already United States troops on the ground. We'll get there, because they moved them in from Japan. And we'll get a little bit more later. But short version, everybody, they were fat, lazy garrison troops. The first American troops did not do very good. The United States will do better when they recall a bunch of World War II veterans, actually. Okay. And one of the first things that happens, do I want to talk about geography? Oh, I shouldn't skip geography anyway, because it's here as part of the organization. Korea, we saw it, right? But we'll see the mountains. See in this background? Korea has a lot of rugged mountains, extreme climate variations, challenging terrain. The peninsula makes it a focal point for politics, obviously. It has a few high peaks, few valleys, significant rivers. It has a monsoon season, typhoons, and then which makes it hard for mechanical vehicles. And then it also has Russian Siberian winters. Fun, everybody. There is a rail network built by the Japanese, but it wasn't enough for modern military operations. So it's going to get interesting. Now the U.S. forces, they're about 70% of their total strength. They're supposed to be higher, but they weren't there. They're all under strength. They had divisions, the 7th, the 25th, 24th, the 1st Cavalry wasn't mounted. And they're all about 30% undermanned. They mentioned training was pretty good, but there's no large-scale training. Again, there is enough World War II vets hanging on that it's not terrible. Like, they are war veterans, but they're rusty war veterans, which that's 5 years later, you've lost a lot of them. And there was a lot of demobilization of World War II, which severely weakened the U.S. military. Nobody wanted to sign up, right? 18 million young men went to fight in World War II, and then you ask them, hey, you want to keep fighting in the military? Very few said yes. So July 2nd, the advanced elements start to show up. And the command structure is set up, but it's basically Americans, everybody. Okay, so how's the army of the Republic of Korea? They technically have soldiers, but how bad did it go? They lost 34,000 men in the first month. It wasn't quite very great. Let's see here. Oh. Do I have it here? Why is that all just popping on? I don't know, everybody. I'll have to fix that in a second. Did I fix it today? I can leave it up. It'll be fine. All right, so we got the response. Let me see here. Is there anything else I want to add for that? I actually might switch back. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. Okay, I got anything else I want to add. Okay, a couple things. South Korean Army did have a lot of divisions. They just were not very good and very under-equipped. How strong were they? Maybe 100,000 troops, but maybe 60,000 actually received combat training. They had some training, and here's the key, everybody. The South Korean Army had no training against tanks. Not great. So they did their best. It didn't work very good. Okay, so this invasion starts June 25th. And they declare war. They send a warning and go do it. And it's a full-scale offensive. And here's the second half of the map where they're pushing them into Pusan. And we did the resolution and everything. But the first week, it's amazing. That's the short version, right? They take the capital in the first week. They have rapid advances. Let's see, anything else I want to add here. A couple interesting things is population of Korea. At this point, they're about 30 million, which is quite interesting. All right, let's see here. Is there anything? I talked about geography. We talked a little bit about ground forces. Let's talk about the Marines, everybody. Okay, so this book's about the Marines. I'm going to be honest with you, everybody. As far as I can tell, the Marines won the war. I mean, the only reason it's a tie is because of the U.S. Marines. And you might say, Professor, you're reading a Marine book. I know, but I have other books sitting here. Like I have one, I can't show you. It's called Victory at High Tide, the Incheon Seoul Campaign. It's a great book by a guy called Robert Heinel. It's totally out of print. The publisher's dead, which is very sad. I liked this publisher. I think they've been dead for like 15 years. It's been a while. What are they called? The Nautical and Aviation Publishing Company of America. Yeah, in the old days, there used to be companies like that. Anyway, now they're probably Amazon Indies. So, okay, the Marines at this point had about 74,000 men. There was actually a debate to just delete the U.S. Marines a year before this. Oh, come on, we don't need them. We're just going to have nukes and bombers in the Army. Hi, everybody. If you've never studied U.S. history, the Marines are not big, but they're elite. The Marines are generally better trained than the main Army. It's not an insult to the Army, it's just what the Marines do. There are very well trained Army units, by the way. There's probably, numerically speaking, there's probably an equal number of very well trained Army men and Marines. It's just a different kind of idea. Okay, so what does MacArthur want to do? He wants a large amphibious operation with a complete Marine division and air components. From the beginning, he understands MacArthur. Remember, he's the guy who won the Pacific War. The only way they're going to win is with they have to have a counterattack. And he immediately just tells the government, I'll do it, but you got to give me the Marines, and I'm going to do a naval invasion. So they start to equip. I mean, they're in Barstow, everybody, right? So it's California. And they start getting all the World War II vehicles back up. They have very capable leadership, which is a big deal. And they rapidly mobilize them, and they're ready to go, even though they're about to be axed politically. Once they're told, and they were told, by the way, 6 months before, you will never do a major amphibious invasion ever again. And then this is like the biggest amphibious invasion since World War II. So again, it's pretty funny. Okay, now one of the generals in charge, General Shepard, points out that the brigade would soon be integrated to a Marine division tasked with an amphibious mission. The assessment was influenced by the nature of enemy, challenging terrain, potential for Soviet or Red Chinese intervention. So the Marines figured out they're reactivated because they're going to do a freaking naval invasion. Okay, let's see here. But yeah, basically they reactivated the Marines and then buffed their sizes. Now this is the reason you do this is here. And do I have it on here? Hold on, everybody. What? No, I don't, but I'll talk about it. We even had a video, everybody. I've had some Korean War videos. They're awesome. This is a F-6F Panther. It's one of the first jets the American used. It's pretty cool. All right. So the Commandant, basically what the Marines have is they had good leadership and a lot of veterans. Their NCOs, which is like sergeants and stuff, and their officers are basically all World War II vets. So they're all World War II vets capable of extracting the best performance from their men. This aligned with the quote attributed to William Sherman, emphasizing the importance of capable corporals, sergeants, lieutenants, and captains over generals. And again, that's a Marine thing, but it's also a U.S. military thing. If your low-level officers and NCOs are good, you can win. And that's what the U.S. basically focuses on. Do I have the advanced party? Oh yeah, this is advanced party chapter. Perfect. Okay, so they send an early party to figure out what the heck's going on in Korea. Remember, it's collapsing in a month, everybody. So a month is nuts. That's very fast. 100,000 soldiers just collapse. By the way, there is a lot more Koreans. Hey, look, a Corsair. So, again, a lot of World War II surplus here. That's a Corsair too, by the way, everybody. It's a Pacific War carrier fighter. And in this war, it becomes a bomber. Although some Corsair pilots are such veterans, they manage to shoot down MiG jets with a prop plane. If you don't know, if that's cool or not, it was thought theoretically impossible. So the fact that it ever happened is pretty cool. Again, that's another book I have in my garage. What is it called? The Effects of Naval Air Power on the Korean War. Another good book, also out of print publisher, which is too bad. Okay, so we have this advance party where they send out the generals and their colonels and their strategic staff to figure out what the heck's going on. They basically fly to Hawaii, then fly to Japan to try to figure out what's happening. And the Marine, and MacArthur keeps pushing, because remember, he's basically king of Japan at this point. He's like, I'll fight this war, I need the Marines. I fight this war, I need the Marines. So they fly the Marines out, and within, and by the way, July 25th, it takes a month, everybody, to approve reactivating the Marines. Why? It's political. The president, Truman, wanted to delete the Marines a month ago. So now he needs them. He can't deactivate them, right? They even had trying to get rid of this, which is carrier air power. Hi, everybody. I'll give you a spoiler now. Korean War proved, there's many studies, that the only effective air power in the war was Marine and Navy direct air attack. That's like when I have a tank like this, right? And this guy with his rockets shoots the enemies in front of me. That's the only part of the war where aircraft made a difference. Bombing your enemy behind the lines literally doesn't work. It doesn't stop them. It just makes them mad and doesn't do anything. By the way, I mentioned that because in Vietnam they try again and it still doesn't work. Okay, strategically allocations and preparations. Okay. Basically, they sucked Marines from everywhere they could get them. They needed them. They took them. They're, if you don't know, they're embassy staff too. All the embassies have Marines. They got everyone they could. They had a draft. They redrafted a bunch of World War II vets who were 5 years older and bring them back in. They make a headquarters in Tokyo. Start to prepare. But there's a huge gap between air and ground elements. They had trouble with that. They even argue trying not to have Marine air. They thank God changed their mind. Okay, they start to plan because again they're in Japan in a place called Itami, and they're told by MacArthur plan an invasion immediately. But here's the thing, everybody. It's so bad that it collapses so quickly. They're forced to get the only active Marine brigade and put it in the Pusan pocket. Again, that's that little corner of the little rump. I'll go back up really quick. It's this rump corner right here of Korea is collapsing so quickly they have to actually get part of their invasion force, land it. It's called the Pusan pocket, and they have to land it here to help hold. Why? There's some army men here and some Republic of Korea troops they can't hold. The Marines are much better soldiers, so they have to actually send part of their invasion force to just go try to hold Korea and not lose it. Again, pretty nuts. They send Marines right away. Some officers go because again they're Marines. They go. They scout out Pusan, see how it's doing. A guy led it called Colonel Edward Forney. Another guy, Colonel Weinrand, and they did reconnaissance. They flew around. They tried to figure out what the heck's going on. They wanted to find suitable landing zones. Again, they're doing recon. They're veterans, right? So they figure out what they need to do to basically try to hold the remainder of South Korea. But the flank was collapsing, and they say especially the left flank. Again, I'll show you that map again. Here, they're pushing around this way in here. So Taegu is right here is where they're going to put the Marines. And the Marines managed to hold this flank, which is most of it, by the way. Again, Marines being Marines. So why is there a whole book on this, everybody? The Marines basically won a war independently. Okay. But yeah, so they're starting to figure out, like, how are we going to fight? What's these kind of engagements? Okay, so now we get here, Prelude to Battle. This is the next chapter. I don't know how much this I'm going to cover. We'll see. We did the advanced bit. Okay, so they're here. And these guys, these colonels, you got to love them. They're on the ground. They just get a Jeep and start driving around. They just commandeer a Jeep, trying to figure out where they're going to go, where they should deploy. They meet all the Army units from 8th Army, try to figure out where they're needed. They figure out, will logistics even work? And they realize the Marines don't have enough supplies, so they got to, commandeer some stuff. They land by August 2nd, and they disembark their forces. Again, this takes a month, right? It's just, that's how long it takes to move a Marine brigade, even if it's ready to go. They have Marine aircraft from Kobe that basically travel to Korea to help out. And this is the key here. There's basically chaos on the waterfront when they're trying to figure this out. It is not easy to understand what the hell's going on. Okay, do I have this here? Not yet. Let's see if there's anything else I want. The supply stuff's kind of dry. Air prep, I have the picture, but the Marines were decently well equipped for air operations. Let's see here. Is there anything else I want to add? But yeah, just pointing it out. I mentioned that the reason I have this picture and the jets and everything, they started early and that they launched from old World War II ships, like for example one called the USS Sicily, and they used Corsairs and just start bombing to help local battles. They flew 21 sorties in a day. Hi everybody, that's a lot. And so Marine planes just start defending. And from this part of the war to the end, one major factor here will be the U.S. Marines and the U.S. Navy just corsairing the snot out of any daytime operations. Eventually, the North Koreans have to switch to nighttime just because there's so many airplanes. But again, you get a half-day break. It's better than nothing. Okay, now we get a lot of specifics here. Let me check my time again. I'll bet you it's 35. 40 minutes. Oh, we might have to split this up. Oh, and I have this map here. This shows you the Pusan perimeter, how bad it got, everybody. And they put the Marines right here. See, Marines? And then the major push came this way. And to give you an idea how these mountains look, everybody, look at that. Just look, it's kind of a bushy, barren, steep mountain. Can you imagine it? So even just thinking like hills, and there's a bunch of these hills, don't remember the numbers, but like they don't have names in English, so they just give them numbers, and they just fight to the death over these terrible rumps of, oh man, mountains. It's terrible. And they're not small. Like this peak 342 is 1,000 foot high, 1,100 foot peak. It did get a nickname. It was called Yamban-san. So again, you're like, Professor South kind of Japanese. I'm the Japanese. Were there for 40 years. Everybody. They probably had Japanese names for everything. Let's not tell anybody. Okay, so this is where you start getting fighting. Specifically, Marine-involved fighting. Okay, so this is the 5th Marines, 27th Infantry, and they're fighting. And at this point, it's all defensive, right? There's no attack. So this is the first Marine action they have, and they're trying to basically defend it. And they attack and then defend the poor thing. But the Marines are very effective. And let's see here. And Chongni is down here, by the way. This is what we're talking about, right there. Boop. So casualties, they fight immediately, they get wounded, but they here's the thing, this is also summer, they do have, quote, heat casualties and emotional breakdowns. Modern war is pretty nuts, and this will be one of the crazier ones nobody ever talks about. But they started putting Marines, just to get idea how bad it was going, they put Marines in the army positions to boost the morale of the army. And so the Marines land, they start doing effective support. They're decently active. Okay. And let's see here. So already the Koreans have basically switched to a night tactic, especially against the Americans they switched, because Americans do have a lot of heavy artillery and stuff. Human waves at night. Now you might say, Professor, is that a terrible or a good idea? Well, if you've got enough guys, and I can't see you, and I can't shoot you to like 20 feet away, even if I had something like a machine gun, right, I'm not killing very many of you before you take my hill. So there's a lot of just night attacks, wave attacks, and the Marines basically managed to hold. The key here is, why we talk about this hill at all, the United States finally won a battle. I mean, wait a minute, Professor. There's this whole Korean battle thing, and what did the U.S. spend most of it doing? Oh, right, retreating. I should have been more clear about that. The whole first part of this battle is just retreating. That's what the U.S. was doing. The army lost for a month, probably 3 weeks. They didn't show up that fast, but there was some units, and they did not do very good. So the army had about half of Korea to fight for, and mostly managed to retreat. And actually, now we're talking about, I'm going to show more videos, even though I can't. Is that the one I want? Can I put it on repeat? Yeah. It wouldn't let me embed all my videos. Sorry, everybody. I don't know why. I've never embedded videos before, but I have so many cool ones. I now don't want to skip them. Here we go. We can watch it. And this one's actually Marines retreating. You're like, Professor, what? End of 51. It's at 51, but it'll come. So even the Marines will have to retreat, everybody. So give you kind of that World War II vibe, right? They're still using, half-ton trucks. They're still using APCs. They got that buggy thing. That's an engineered vehicle, right? So, okay. So let's work our way through this. So this hill, why do we care? It's the first time the U.S. didn't lose, everybody. See, there's some old Jeeps. You guys probably have never seen Jeeps. I shouldn't depress myself. Okay, you used to see these on the road, everybody. That's how old I am. All right, and abandoned vehicles. That tells you something too, right? Hi, everybody. Okay, so this is the first time the U.S. wins anything. And that's a big deal. And the enemy keeps attacking. They do not stop. Every night. Because they feel it, right? Think about it. You got that little perimeter there. You know you're going to win, right? The North Koreans like, we got this. There's no way they can stop us. Look at this. We have all the concentrated force. We outnumber them. We're just going to push them to the sea. We get Korea. So the Koreans really almost win this. Now, that'll work. I'll bring my picture back. Perfect. Okay. And this first engagement is like one company, everybody. That's like 300 guys or something, 500 guys. They're understrained companies. That's why it's smaller. Okay. So now we get basically this battling. Let me see what I want here. Am I skipping this? August 8th? No. 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 Excuse me, everybody. My notes. I'm normalizing my notes. I see it. Okay, let's go here. Let's go. The Battle of Neck. There we go. Okay, I found it. Ha! Sorry, everybody. I have so many notes. I have to use Control F on my notes. Okay, so this is the first action. Again, this hill, just care that it's down here near the south, that big old red arrow, and somehow the Americans stop it. And again, you say, Professor, is that a big deal or a little deal? Gigantic. Gigantic. Okay, so then we have this Battle of Nangtong, which is a river. It's basically right here, the Pusan perimeter. And they're trying to hold it. Why does it matter? It's the last natural barrier protecting supply from Pusan to Tanggu here. So if the Americans lose this, and you can say Koreans too, it's basically Americans, you can't supply the headquarters, and this whole front collapses, and they're doomed. By the way, Pusan's the only port that's usable. The Japanese developed the heck out of it, and it was an old Korean port too. So all supplies are coming here. They're going up very limited roads. So if the Koreans just take this and they're on that supply road, think about it, you have to go like one road all the way around. They're doomed. So the U.S. Marine Brigade finally gets the whole thing deployed here, right? And they're trying to hold. That's it. They're doing their best. And so August 6th, the beginning of the attack, they're basically breaching the defense line. That's where those Marines first started. But the Marines shuttle in. They get their units in there trying to start fighting. Let me see what I'm here. Okay, so some overviews here. Basically, by the 8th, the North Koreans reinforced again. They have a reinforced regiment east of the bank of the river. Over the last 2 days, they pushed in. And remember, the Koreans have artillery. They have armor. It's not just infantry. So it's a full army fighting a full army. And previously, they'd fought the U.S. and captured significant territories from them. This unit, the where are we looking? 4th Division of the North Korean People's Army. Okay, so now they're basically the goal is to hold. And a colonel of an infantry regiment has said, hold. And they do their best. And there's something called the Noktung Bulge, where they're trying to defend this river. And then they just even trying to hold this at all is pretty nuts because their trucks are breaking. Look at even our little picture here. This is the north, by the way, but just it's quite difficult to even fight here at all. And so basically, they have the 5th Marine here, and they're attempting to hold. Hold on, do I have the 5th Marine? Oh, I do. Hold on, everybody. My 2 slides are working together against me. Okay, so they throw the Marines into this battle. They're trying to hold. Wow, and there's so much detail. Hold on, everybody. Okay. All right, so this is actually an attack, which is funny enough. The U.S. is counterattacking, trying to push the North Koreans back. And they finally get direct help from the airstrike, the Marine aircraft. Do I have that video? Hold on, I might have that video, everybody. Might be awesome. Let's see if it works. This one's small. And it's color, which means it's like 42, yeah, 42 or 43. We can actually see a simulated attack. Professor, is it real? Well, they do have an airstrike in this. It's pretty cool. But just look at that terrain, everybody. Oh my goodness. Just looking at it makes me in pain. Truly, it's painful. Can you imagine? Oh man, I can. That's why I'm just like, takes. By the way, if they're doing takes, they're not actually fighting. But they're showing you their equipment. This is summer, obviously not winter. The last one was winter. And this is all B-roll. You know what I mean? They're doing it for propaganda. Some of it will be bombing though, which is fun. Okay, so this is the first time the Americans attacked the whole war. That's why Noktung matters, is they're trying to counterattack. They're desperately counterattacking. And it's the Marines, of course. And they take heavy casualties, but they take the objective and actually keep the river. Again, all the Marines have to do is not lose. At this point, all they've been doing is losing, the Army and the Republic of Korea. So their goal is to just hold it. Hold it, don't lose. They get direct air support. Again, radio bro, that's what they're doing. And they manage to take and hold an important mountain. So again, we're not going to get into all the details. If you want it, read the book. It's amazing. I'm just looking at all this detail. It's just shocking me. Okay, hold on a second. Okay, we keep going. Provisional Brigade. Oh, we're actually on time. Everybody, I'm doing it. Okay, does this one actually show the airstrike? I want to see it. Hold on. Oh yeah, here we go. This is, I think they actually film an airstrike. Although this late in the war, they literally might just be bombing an empty hill. Did we miss it? No. We'll start here. Let's see if we get to watch it. It's good background. Okay, so they finally have some success, everybody. They have the Nakton Bulge battle. I think next time we'll get more of this. So they start to defend the Pusan perimeter and not losing. That's it. So this basically gives, we'll talk about it today a little bit, the Incheon landing. This will give the Marines and MacArthur a chance to actually plan a military invasion. And now where are they going to invade? I got to show you guys that. Here we go. We'll go up here real quick. Excuse me, everybody. It's Incheon is here, right in the middle of Korea. So they're fighting down here. The U.S. does a freaking Hail Mary and attacks here in Incheon. That's the whole plan. And they're going to cut the peninsula in half, try to tap the North Korean army. And I say, Professor, what? That sounds insane. Does it work? They pull it off. It's nuts. They actually manage it. And so again, the Marines. It's the Marines and MacArthur. So the Navy and the Marines win it, basically. Okay, so they basically drive and manage to keep the Pusan pocket, which is a big deal in terms of not losing a war. Okay. And again, I'm skipping so much stuff. Please go read the book. It's amazing. So by September 3rd, they've basically figured out we're holding, let's invade. Now, to make it even crazier, remember that map I showed you with Marines here who are barely holding? They actually even managed to snatch the Marines who are holding this front, put them in the invasion, because they don't have enough. They got to use these guys who've been fighting for 2 or 3 months. Now, the numbers right now, it's guessed that it's something like 133,000 men still for the North Vietnamese after their casualties. Remember, the Koreans started with South Koreans started with 60,000 effective and lost half. So, it's not going great. Okay, we talked about the attack. We talked about that. Do I want any more? No. I'm looking for anything else I'm adding there. No, we're good. There's so much around this. It's so depressing, everybody. Okay, let's do the 1st Marine Provisional Brigade. Okay, so they finally have this brigade. This is the one that they sent there to basically hold the Pusan. This is this brigade. They did the Nakton Bulge. We talked about it. MacArthur, how do you think they did? This is interesting to read about. He reported highlighting the elimination of them basically being defeated. And this boosted morale and disrupted the plans. This one brigade basically saves the war. Good job, Marines. And it notes here, the Marines Board of Study, their own study group, pointed out the brigade's actions in Nakton Bulge and subsequent battles disrupted the North Korean efforts to sever this lifeline between the Taegu and Pusan. And it was instrumental for planning the counterstrike, which is the amphibious invasion of Incheon. And why did it work? It said the brigade was rapidly deployed. They did those scout missions. They were prepared. They had high leadership and professional ability. They were well trained. Air support, also a huge deal. The air support innovations, that the Marines are the only ones using real direct close air support. Now, if you don't know what that means, in the Marines, every pilot has to spend time on the ground in the infantry. So every pilot's an infantryman, which is already kind of nuts. That's very Marine. But then every close air support guy, that's that guy with the radio we just saw on the ground. Every close air support guy in the USMC is a pilot. So the guy calling airstrikes is a trained pilot. So the Marines are very good at getting these. We have this little carrier. It's a little dinky carrier too. Oh my goodness. These carriers can get the hits where they want them, and it's like we're looking at this video. It's by the way, the only part of the war that it's very helpful. And this basically brought back morale in the country. And it pointed out too, there was myths that modern war was going to be easy. This destroys them. Just the Pusan pocket. And also, they demonstrate the necessity of close combat, importance of ground forces. You can't get rid of infantry. The importance of the navy. This single-handedly, just the Pusan pocket before Incheon, Pusan basically saved the USMC and most of the navy. So it's a big deal. And I'll change my video because I'm almost done, but I'm still talking. Let's see. Is this that depressing one? Oh man, this one's depressing. I'll put it in now. This is going to come up next time, everybody. A winter retreat. Oh boy. This is part 2, everybody. We'll come back next time for more. This is all B footage from the military again. But again, there's so much of this now free online. It's amazing. And if you look at them, right, they're just equipped World War II style. No tech differences really, except for some jets. Look at those gnarly hills. So so the USMC basically saves the day, even before the Incheon landing. Now I want to do a little more on it. Like I said, there's a whole book here I've studied called Victory at High Tide. It's great. But basically MacArthur does a crazy, he reactivates the Marines. The government had basically deleted half the Marines and then gotten rid of most of their amphibious training. He forced them to bring it back. And how seat of the pants this was, everybody, a majority of the amphib craft in this war to land at Incheon, are you ready? They were donated, America deactivated and donated to Japan. And then they're driven by former Imperial Japanese Navy captains. Let me say this again. Part of the success of the Incheon landing is because almost all the craft were still driven by Imperial Japanese Navy retired captains. Like, it was seat of the pants. Now, the reason I mention that is because Imperial Japanese Navy is one of the best trained navies in world history. But the U.S. thought, we'll never need it again, it'll be fine. And then they get bailed out by their new allies who were, thought they're never going to go to war again, driving them into a war zone, everybody. But the United States do manage a successful landing. Nobody expected it at all. So the United States lands a couple of, the Marine Division lands and then Army Divisions land. And they manage to cut Korea in half. And overnight, nearly, win the first half of the Korean War. And that, I think, is the perfect ending for part 1. I've been going 57 minutes. I hope you guys like the videos. I had so much fun looking for these videos, everybody. Don't get me wrong, I like robo-generated videos as much as the next guy. But there's something full about just seeing, they're like real people. We can see them. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Again, if you want more, let me show the book one more time, just for those of you who are interested. I'm not that original. I'm getting all of this from the Marine Operations in Korea, 1915-1953. This is Volume 1, the Pusan Perimeter. Volume 2 we'll do next time, which will probably be Thursday. Let me see if I have this ready. Oh, yeah. We're going to be doing the Push North and the Chosun Reservoir campaign. Those will be our next two. We'll do a bit of both. Again, they're very Marine-centric. Oh, hey, Crash Plane. How you doing? That's a Dauntless, isn't it? Or the Avenger. Looks like a fatter. Looks like an Avenger. Okay, so again, Professor Zeiser, I have a lot of random, not sure how useful World War II knowledge, everybody. But it's part of the joy. That's why they pay me the big bucks. All right, so we'll be back. The next one will be, oh, hey, Boxcar. Again, it's an old supply. It's a cool-looking two-tailed supply craft. So it's doing this overview. Man, I love the videos too much, everybody. Sorry. Okay, I just want to kind of leave it for a minute. Stand by, everybody. Where is this? Okay, that's one. What's that? Aha, I see what I'm missing. Okay, guys, we're missing a part. I will rectify it for next time. It's just making me disappointed, that's all. 4, 5. Aww, that's too bad. Okay, I gotta go hunt for something, everybody. But besides that, enjoy. You can go look these up, by the way. If you get these numbers here, ADC 1127.1. There's a boxcar. Nice. These are all public, open source, government released educational videos. So I'm shamelessly using them. All right, I'm going to end here. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye now.